Welcome to Losing My Religion with Joe Armstrong. Last Thursday I had an incredible conversation with Pat Byrne on Dundalk FM about my journey from aspiring priest to leaving and finding my true self. We dive into my adolescent dream of priesthood, the reality of the Catholic Church, and a transformative realisation that changed everything. Highlights include my dream of becoming a priest, doctor, teacher or priest. I chose the best, priest, as I thought at the time. Married priests, and what for me is the big lie of religion. The challenge of the vow of obedience. You know yourself better than anyone else. How studying philosophy and theology led to my non-belief. And falling in love and being married now for nearly 32 years. And my journey from belief to unbelief and how it inspired my song So Glad I Married You, sung beautifully by The Rain, and songwriters were The Rain, R-A-Y-N-E, Andrea Petrone and myself, Joe Armstrong. And the interview concludes with that song, which I find so moving. I hand you over to Pat Byrne of Dundalk FM.
On 97.7 FM and online. This is Dundalk FM.
Hello again, just in Town Talk with myself, Pat Byrne, and I'm playing Take Me to Church because I think it's relevant to our next guest. He's a man who walked away from life as a Marist priest, no less, to go on to do lots of different things. He's an author, a journalist, a documentary maker, lots more indeed, and now he's a songwriter as well, and we're going to hear that wonderful song from Joe Armstrong. Joe, you're very welcome to Town Talk.
Hello, Pat. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. And Joe, we'll talk about this song, and I've listened to it. It's a fantastic song in a minute or two. But first, your story, because I mentioned that you walked away from life as a priest with the Marist. I'm a Marist by myself, went to school here in the Marist in Dundalk, but you decided to, at one stage to become a Marist priest. What happened?
I did. I decided I wanted to be a priest. It's the only thing I ever wanted to do. In my late teens, I thought, some people wanted to go off and write music or become an accountant or, a sports person. I just wanted to be a priest. So I thought, what were the three best things I thought to do? A doctor, a priest, a teacher. And I thought, well, I'll do the best of them all. I'll be a priest.
Okay, so you signed up for the gig, basically.
Yeah, I joined the Marist back in 1980 when Moses was a boy, as they say. I was a tender 18 years of age, very innocent, very naive, not in the least bit worldly wise, and but with great enthusiasm and ambition and ideals and all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't the only one. There were 20 of us. We joined the Marist Fathers, novitiate back in 1980. 20 of us, imagine. And the Marist, of course, well known in Dundalk.
Yes. And 1980, of course, was back then, before the sort of, what would I call it, the sea change in the world of formal religion. It was very different. I mean, you were doing the right thing almost.
Well, it felt like a good and a holy thing to do kind of thing. And there had already been a drop-off in the church back in the 1960s of the Vatican Council. It seemed the church was getting open to the world, and, that Pope John XXIII came in and opened the windows of the Vatican. And we didn't kind of know at the time that this other guy called John Paul II was kind of closing them again. So, when I would have been part of a generation that thought that sometime in the future priests would be allowed to marry. And it didn't take me too long to come to the realization that the church isn't going to change. It's just fixed. It's just never going to allow priests to marry. And that was kind of awful. It was also scary because I remember one of the lessons we had on celibacy, and I remember Dennis Green, who was a wonderful priest, a wonderful human being, and I loved him very much. But I remember he gave a lecture one time and he said, even if other priests are allowed to marry, we won't be allowed to marry because secular priests take a promise of celibacy to their bishop, but we make a vow of celibacy to God. And I thought, God, you never told me that before. And I thought, oh, that's terrible. Anyways.
And can I ask you, here you are in a seminary with 20 other young men, and you're thinking these thoughts. Did you ever discuss this among yourselves?
Oh yeah, we did. Japers, we did, and it was a wonderful experience. I mean, I loved, especially my novitiate, because we had 20 really good guys, enthusiastic guys, idealistic guys, and we wanted to make the world a better place. So, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
So we had all of these conversations about celibacy and the church, and one of the things actually I discovered when I joined the Mount St Mary's, which is in Milltown in Dublin. It's old now; it's no longer a seminary.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and by the way, of those 17 of us left, only 3 of them still there.
Okay, and that's probably par for the course. That tells its own story, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, you at what stage did you leave? I mean, how long did you stay in the seminary?
I stayed for 9 years. It took me a long time for the penny to drop. That, not only did I not believe that I had a vocation, I genuinely came to my personal judgment that the whole thing is a big lie.
You say the whole thing. What do you mean?
The whole religion thing, and any religion. There have been sort of 13,000 or even more religions. I don't know whether it's today or there's basically been, nobody believes in the Viking gods or the Celtic gods or the Roman gods or none of these gods. No, everybody is atheistic about those gods. And, so I've just added one more religion to that lot, which is I don't believe in the Christian beliefs either, nor Islam, nor Judaism, or anything like that. And I've never been happier. And I wrote 2 memoirs about it, and the collective name for the memoir is Losing Religion, Finding Myself. And that it's an active process. It's losing religion, finding myself, and that genuinely has been the story of my life.
And finding yourself, I mean, so you left, you made what must have been a major decision for you to leave the seminary. So you hadn't actually gone the full course. You were 9 years there, but not quite.
9 years there, the Marists, different priests, Jesuits are maybe 14 years to be priest. Yeah. The secular priests, Maynooth or whatever, they might take 6 or 7 years. But the Marists were sort of a bit in between. Because it was a teaching order, we would do a degree along the way, and I never wanted to teach. But I had to, did a degree, and I was happy to do the degree, although I wasn't happy with the degree. I wanted to do a different degree. But anyway, that's part of obedience, and that was, of course, another thing, which was almost harder for me than celibacy.
Yeah.
And goodness, I can tell you, it was very, very hard. I never cut out to do that. But obedience was almost, to me, even harder because, a superior or a provincial or whoever is an ordinary human being.
Mm-hmm. And
the idea with the vow of obedience is that you are expected to believe that the decision that they make, that your superior or your provincial or that their decision for you is the will of God. And I thought that doesn't make any sense because these are fallible human beings whom I knew made mistakes. And I thought, well, how could a mistake that they make, which will very personally affect my life, how could that possibly be the will of God? Because that's, you know yourself, Pat, better than anybody else knows you, and I know myself better than anybody else knows me. And so, for example, if I know I want to be, let's say, a writer, and the superior says to me, right, Joseph, well, the will of God for you is you go and teach for the rest of your life over the next 5 years. And I think, that's wrong. That's not me. And I knew guys in the Marists, and indeed in other orders, who were crushed personally, didn't grow because of decisions made for them by somebody else, and we were expected to believe that was the will of God. And I thought that's BS.
So the hierarchy basically ruled with the will of God. That was it. You did what the hierarchy said because it was the will of God.
Well, there's a more nuanced look at it, and they talk about, they listen to you and you listen to them, but at the end of the day, in prayerful discernment, you go with what they decide.
Okay. And Joe, can I ask you spent 9 years in the seminary. That's a lot of education. I mean, okay, so let's say you did a degree, 3 or 4 years perhaps on a degree for teaching, but the 9 years, what was the main focus of those 9 years? What did you learn?
Well, you obviously have to learn philosophy, you have to learn theology, and that's a very, very good thing. Because, and to be honest with you, theology, studying about God and the history of the church and, the doctrine of the Trinity and the Immaculate Conception and the Bible and the sacraments and priesthoods, all that kind of stuff. You obviously have to do that. But to be honest with me, that gave me the intellectual basis for my non-belief. Had I left earlier, I possibly would have still been a believer. But because I studied the thing, I thought, this is nonsense. It's just nonsense, like the first resurrection story of Jesus in the earliest canonical Bible, Gospel of Mark. There was absolutely no account of the risen Jesus in the earliest version of Mark's Gospel. It was added later. And you kind of think, oh, come on. Somebody tells me in a time, 2,000 years. Anyway, look, let's not go into all the thing. And I believe it's very important to different people. But I personally came to my personal, honest judgment, it's a big lie, which I have believed. And I kind of felt resentful that I had been indoctrinated into that belief as a child. But on the other hand, so many religions around the world do, teach their kids the tenets of their particular religion, and the chances are that they will grow up believing their particular religion and will make the decisions based on those beliefs, which, with the benefit of hindsight and objective reality, are probably based on nothing.
So, Joe, you make a decision, decide to walk away from life as a priest in the Marist. You've got all this wonderful philosophy and theology, but you're going out now into the big bad world. What did you take on? What did you decide to do? How did you make your way in the world?
Well, ironically, I'd never wanted to be a teacher, right?
Right.
And I went to a Christian Brothers school myself in Dublin. And I would have never dreamt of becoming a Christian brother because I could not see the point of being celibate, poor and obedient in order to teach, maths and history. Like, why would you do that? Especially in Ireland at the time, where there were loads of really good lay teachers. There was no shortage of teachers. And I thought, why would anybody be celibate, poor and obedient to teach? It just didn't make any sense to me. And the irony is, though, when I left, I became a teacher. And that's partly because I've done 9 years, but really I was qualified for nothing. I mean, I had
I'm going to ask you a hard question. What did you teach?
What did I teach?
You didn't teach religion, did you?
I started off teaching English because I did a degree in English and history.
Okay.
So I started off teaching English. And then, guess what? I asked if I could teach RE, religious education.
You did?
And the reason being because I was better at that than anything else because I'd done 9 years of studying theology and philosophy and gone to spiritual direction, all that kind of stuff.
So you knew what you're talking about even if you didn't believe some of it?
Oh yeah, and what I loved about it though in England, I was teaching in England, what I loved about it there was no attempt on, certainly in my school, even though I was in a Catholic school, there was no attempt by the school or by the curriculum to kind of quote-unquote inculcate faith.
Yeah.
That wasn't what it was about. It was about teaching, look, this is what the church teaches. Now, you might form your judgment that that's a load of nonsense, but so long as you can argue it's a load of nonsense and do so intelligently and in an informed way, you will get an A. And somebody else who's just trots out the stuff that they were taught since they were 5 will probably get a D because they haven't argued the case. And I loved that. I loved actually RE in England, at least where I was, was helping people to think for themselves.
And understand the world of religions, plural, yeah?
Yeah.
So, Joe, you're over in England and you met and married Ruth. That, again, must have been a huge change in your world.
Utterly. Yeah, it was great. It was super duper because, to meet somebody whom I totally loved and turned my life upside down and accepted all of me as I am. And, we're married now 31, I think it's nearly 32 years. And, best thing
And you've written a song about it?
I wrote a song about it, I did.
Tell us more.
How romantic, you see.
It is a very romantic song. It absolutely is. We'll hear it now in a moment, but you tell us the story of the song.
Okay, the story of the song is this, that I'd done a documentary for it way back on my experience in the seminary.
From belief to unbelief.
From belief to unbelief. It's still on, you can listen to it on Doc on 1 on RTE, you can, from belief to unbelief. So I did that, and the thing about that was it was a 40-minute documentary, and I realised I can't tell my story in 40 minutes. So I went off and I wrote not one but two memoirs, trying to explore my personal transition. How did I go from belief to unbelief, right? And then having done that, I then thought, God, that's an awful lot for somebody to read. And can I actually do it in a much more compact way? And I thought, well, let's write a song about it. So myself and two wonderful collaborators, The Rain, R-A-Y-N-E, so please look up The Rain on Spotify, R-A-Y-N-E. Wonderful story himself. That's a different interview. But he's a great guy, The Rain. And another guy, Andrea Patron, who is an Italian living in Estonia. So The Rain is based in England, in Leeds in England, and Andrea, anyway, the three of us, we wrote this song. And the first verse, like in one verse, tells the entire story, wow. Which it took me 80-something thousand words to tell the story of the seminary. And the second verse, again, in one verse, tells a story that it took me another 80-something thousand words to tell about meeting Ruth. So it's really compact. When I heard it, when I heard The Rain singing our almost final version of it, I just kept crying. It was touching something very deep inside me, and it will touch a lot of deep inside a lot of people, I'm sure, because it's an absolutely beautiful song. Joe, I'm watching the clock, so we're going to have to let you go, but it's been great talking to you, hearing your story, and now I'm looking forward to hearing your song, So Glad I Married You. Joe, thanks very much. That's Joe Armstrong, a man of many talents. Joe, thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you, Pat. It's been a total pleasure.
Here is Joe Armstrong, the song of Joe Armstrong with the people he's just mentioned, and So Glad I Married You.
Built myself a house of glass, searching for the divine. Thought I don't need anyone else, I've got God on my side. Freedom, money or love, they could never be mine. But deep inside my heart I knew I was living a lie. Happiness started when I first went with you. Ruthie, words can't say all that you mean to me. My Ruthie, so glad I married you. You took me as I am, accepted all of me. Glad I asked, so happy you said I do. Broke free from that house of glass, took control of my life. Then one day I saw your face, I needed you by my side. Freedom and the riches of love, these could be yours and mine. From deep inside my heart I asked, would you be my bride? Happiness started when I first went with you. Ruthie, words can't say all that you mean to me. My Ruthie, so glad I married you. You took me as I am, accepted all of me. Glad I asked, so happy you said I do. Everything I'm proud of, we created together. I loved you then, I love you still. I love you forever. 'Cause happiness started when I first went with you. Ruthie, words can't can't say all that you mean to me. My Ruthie, so glad I married you. You took me as I am, accepted all of me. Glad I asked, so happy you said I do. Glad I asked, so happy you said I do. So glad I asked, so happy you said I do.
That's Joe Armstrong, and so glad I married you.
97.7 Dundalk FM Town Talk.
And that was the wonderful Pat Byrne on Dundalk FM. Thank you so much, Pat. And thank you, Dundalk FM. And thank you for listening to this podcast, Losing My Religion with Joe Armstrong. Until the next time, happy days.